This is the Slots and Sockets Podcast, episode number 14. The Ryzen 9900X3D saves the day. I am your host, well, one of your hosts, IRD Boos, and my partner in crime right there.
Turbo Penguin.
The Penguin of Turbos, yes. Happy Wednesday to you. So we're doing an early special episode today for some rumors that came out about some certain 3D parts from a three-lettered manufacturer that's coming down the pike.
The best three letters, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got ARM, and I mean, everybody's got those, so, you know.
Yeah, that's
everybody has an AMD.
Exactly right. So one thing we wanted to kind of give you a little background story here is, we've been hearing, news from retailers is that the 9000 series has it's sucked pond water. It's not selling. And, they launched and there were some issues at launch. It is very clear that the 9000 series, 9900, the 9700, 96, no, 7, there was 96, 97, and 99. That's what.
Yep.
Sorry, they didn't have a 98. That those released, it is wildly evident that those came out too early. I don't understand, and I think that this is the reason why we're talking today is because they have a little bit of a problem. They released too early. They weren't ready. Motherboards weren't ready. Software wasn't ready. And it's taken, 2.5 months to get these things sorted off. Now, realistically speaking, I think AMD has done a horrible job at, communicating and for a lot of different reasons. But let's be honest here real quick. At the end, where we're at right now, okay, we have the 97 and 9600 both have BIOS updates that allow higher power usage. So that's good. 2, those parts have been discounted. And that's good. And 3, we have another Aegis update that fixes the interlatency of the 9700X. Now, there's going to be another update that's going to help improve the latency of the 9900X. So that's coming. So we're not out of the woods, but that's kind of where things are at right now. Now, why that's important? Well, they're not selling. AMD needs to sell these. They're in the sales of processors. So it's important for them to sell. Otherwise, they don't make money. And so the problem is that I think from the get-go, what they should have said is they should have said the 96, 97, and 9900X, here's the performance, but for gaming, the 9800X is coming out. And I think it was originally slated for early Q1 of next year. There's a lot of people a lot of the leaks were like, yeah, we probably won't see it this year.
Well, yeah, and I think for the whole 9000 series launch, as rough as it was, I have the distinct feeling that they kind of rushed it out because of the news from Intel, because they're like, oh, we can really capitalize on this. And even then, within the rush time frame, they kind of had to delay it a bit anyway. Yeah. I don't know that I buy the entire, we mislabeled some 7700X parts as Ryzen 9s. There was, I'm pretty sure, and Jay's 2 cents makes this point in his video that, like you said, they weren't ready with Aegisa. They had to push out an update to improve the intra-core, well, not core, but the intra-chiplet latency on the Infinity Fabric, which is awesome. You're getting more than double the performance you had before the update, but the fact that they had to scramble to get that out, I think, was a bit of a black mark, though not nearly as big of a black mark as what we saw on the Intel side. And they did a good job of recovering it. A much better job than they did with the exploding parts last year.
I mean, let's be honest here for a second. Um, us trying to give kudos to AMD for not having processors that kill themselves or explode is
Right?
sort of a pathetic,
It's yeah.
talking point, right? And
It's the
that's
bare minimum.
just in general,
Yeah.
right? Your products should not overvolt them, kill themselves. They should not explode out of their sockets.
Yep.
Like they shouldn't catch fire. Like that. That's the basic premise of electronics, right? And so look, I think in general, and I think gamers agree, the 9000 series launch was garbage,
Yeah.
absolute garbage. Um, Now, I think that they've kind of they've overcome the issues. Now, what's really interesting about the 9000 series that really kind of comes to my mind here is, I mean, isn't it a little surprising that from the time of release to today, and that's been what, about 2 months, I think.
Yeah, right around there.
Um, in 2 months, we've gotten double digit performance boosts like twice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if you were a 9700X, you got free power, boost, which was great. And now you're going to get an Aegis update, which is going to help your efficiency even more. I would be very interested. Now, I do not have these parts, but I would be very interested to run these numbers again, from a reviewer's perspective at how these, line up and stack up against, because it's my understanding that these products are going to get a substantial bump. And you compare that with the Windows update, then, there's some positive things for people who own those systems. Like at the beginning, you're like, oh my goodness, I'm really, it sucks for people who bought them. Now, not so
Yeah.
much, right? I feel like you're getting your value. And I think that with this generation, I think it's going to sell not very well, and then it's going to get a discount and it's going to do very well. I really think that we're going to see this product kind of come into its own in probably 6 months. But it's going to take a little bit of time for gamers to feel like, yeah, that's a good thing. But let's fast forward. So everything is not good in AMD Topia. And they've got this 98, they come out and they're like, we're going to release the 7600X 3D. And we're like, great, another, a prior gen X3D. Okay, if you live in Germany or with a Micro Center, yay, if you're a budget gamer. But that doesn't help because everyone's all about like speed. They want the 9800X 3D.
Yep.
And the leak is that AMD is pushing this to come out way earlier. And the other thing that we need to keep in mind is that this is not going to be a rebranded 7800X 3D. If you look at what they were talking with the 9000 series GPUs, or it's not 9000 series CPUs, one of the things that was brought up multiple times was how good the X3D was going to be.
Yeah.
And there was multiple talking points from multiple different people about how this X3D is not a revision of the prior X3D. It's not like a 7800 X3D with some IPC upgains.
It's a whole new generation of X3D, basically redone from the ground up as a specifically designed part.
I believe what we're going to see here is we're going to see the evolution of 7800 X3D to the 9800 X3D just in the 7 to 9000 series.
Yeah.
But I think what we're going to see is X3D V2 version 2.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of talking points about what that looks like. I think that a 9900 X3D could very easily have, instead of two 6 CDs, I think we're probably talking 2 8s. So that would be 16 core, 32 thread. I also believe that there is going to be, I firmly believe this, because if they do this, it's going to be so well, as long as they can release this with the software.
Yeah.
I believe we're going to see dual CCDs with X3D.
Interesting, you mentioned that.
See.
So
I think we're going to see that. I think that not only at that, I think you're going to see some efficiency gains as we get into version 2.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's interesting you mentioned the CCDs because that's something that Jay Susense was talking about in his video about some of the rumors he had heard about the 98, 99, and 9950X 3D parts, that instead of doing two CCDs, they might actually do one big fat CCD, which would completely cut out the uh, Infinity Fabric. And so if they do that, then that's even better because then you don't have to worry about core parking because all of your cores have access. You know, if you got a monolithic 16 core 9950X 3D, then you don't have to worry about core parking because you've got all of that 144 megs in one piece of silicon, which that'd be pretty awesome.
I
Even
really
if
think
even
that,
if it's two CCXs, that's still pretty awesome.
yeah, it's clear that they've got some unique ways of how they can configure this, whether that's one big CCD, whether that's multi CCDs with X3D, um, whatever that is. I believe that they've got a performance bump. So, like if X3D was running at 100% in 9800X, I really think we're going to see some bump, of 105, 107, 110 just in the X3D pieces.
Yeah.
And that is going to directly relate not to throughput, as like you run through like SandraSoft or Max and any of the synthetic software. But when you get into games, you are going to see a substantial increase in this. And if we can get a CCD fix, like a latency, even if it is two CCDs, if we can have double the X3D and where you're not having to worry about core parking
Mm-hmm.
and some of these other, X3D unique features, let's just say,
The stuff we've
um,
had to deal with to this point. Yeah.
I really think you're going to see some dramatic increases when it comes to gaming. And you know, all I can say is I hope, because if that's the case and we don't have to worry about core parking, think if you just took core parking out of the
Mhm.
mix, like how much faster would a 7800 X3D without core parking be? How much faster would a 7800 X3D be with double X3D RAM or the
Right.
storage?
Just
Like
in general
we
day to day
start looking
usage.
at
Yeah.
just in general, like those are going to be hugely beneficial pieces,
Yep.
especially in games where you're trying to kind of do a little bit of little tasks here, 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 and then you've got big tasks kind of coming in and out. Like that's where the X3D really succeeds. And so, could we see a generation where you see 7800X3D and in gaming a 12%, a 10%, a 15%? I don't know what we're looking at. I have no behind the scenes information on game uplift, but I realistically think that we very well could be at double digits. And I think they've got the issues kind of sort of off. And I really hope that AMD takes their time and they're talking about an October chat. I think that October chat might be 8800 XT and 9800 X3D.
Oh, that would be a killer combination together.
I think
That
they're
would
going to
be
do that,
huge.
and it would be if they can. And I really hope that they don't do this for the sake of saying we're releasing two things at the same time.
Right.
Please, AMD, because I really think in the community right now, like people are like, okay, they talk about AMD and they, you give out some numbers. I believe it when I see it. And the
Yep.
problem is that if you go down that route, people are skeptical and you cannot let that stick. You
Yep.
are going to damage your brand. AMD, you need, I don't care who it is, You need somebody from a reviewer's perspective to look at these parts and say, this is the percentage you're getting, and uplift from gen to gen, that 9800X3D to 7800X3D.
Yep.
And you've got to be transparent. You can put some caveats in there, plus and minus 5%, plus and minus 10%, right?
Sure.
But you've got to get that stuff. So by the time it hits reviewers, people aren't like, yeah, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they said 15%, but it's really only 3%. You can't have that.
No.
Like, you need to have a resoundingly positive release. It's got to be so well received that everyone is just like, yes, take all of my money plus more. Now,
Right.
the loaded question, I think, is going to be price. We've seen the 9000 series slip in price as they try to get more of these sold. I think that doesn't make sense. That will probably continue, especially the 9800X3D. There is not a 9800X. We'll just give AMD time because they'll have like 500 SKUs for the 9000 series. Just, give it some time. Give it like 10 years.
Yeah,
we'll have the
2028
X3D,
yeah.
right?
99.99.
X40, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I really think that if they slot everything down from a price point, you'll continue to have SKUs sell. And I think from a price point, you sit there and say, you know what? Merry Christmas, gamers, on so many different levels. You're going to get a 9800X 3D, and it's going to cost you $499.
And if you can't shell out the cash and you got a micro center nearby, get the 7600X 3D to get you started.
7600X, exactly,
and then,
right?
Upgrade.
And buy yourself an 8800 XT. I really think that you'll be able to buy like an $1,100 bundle at Micro Center that'll have 9800X 3D, a motherboard, 32 gigs of RAM, and an 8800X XT, and it'll be just like this ultimate upgrade for pretty much every gamer out there.
Yep.
And it'll be glorious.
And it'll wind up being the same price as the PS5 out the door.
Maybe.
Roughly.
It'll probably be a little bit more expensive, but it'll also be way powerful, a lot
way more useful and powerful. Yeah.
A lot faster, a lot more powerful, a lot of everything.
Yeah.
I really think that if AMD has really solved their problems about being able to release crap that's not ready, then this is good. And AMD needs to really have their ducks in a row.
I agree.
They really can't afford it again. And I really hope that they reach out and maybe talk to some reviewers and say, this is what we have. What do you think of this? Maybe that's what they need is to get some, and maybe they need to go out and hire somebody who is a reviewer to say, this is how reviewers review this. Maybe that's the position that or maybe they have that position and that person is horrifically bad at their job. I don't know. I don't know where the downfall falls, but someone has to be able to go between engineering and marketing and pull the bull crap out and say, this is what this actually is, because marketing people are clueless. It would be nice if tech companies actually hired like marketing people who knew what some of these things were. Like, they weren't marketing majors. Like, they were people who were technical and could maybe answer a question of like what IPC is,
Right.
I look at like Intel and Scott Peterson with the graphics division. That dude's an engineer at heart, but he's really good at selling and talking about, as a marketing person, and allowing them not to overstate what they have. And AMD kind of needs a Scott Peterson. Hey, you know what? With ARC pretty much dead, maybe he'll be looking for a job.
Maybe. I mean, or hire one of us that has a reasonably good grasp of it. I mean, hey, I'd be willing to work for relatively cheap. I'd be cheaper than Scott
Relatively.
Peterson. So, and I'm another Scott, so that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I think in general, the news of it, or at least the rumor of it launching by the end of October, is potentially a good thing. But, to your point, this absolutely is AMD's launch to lose, because Intel literally handed them a gilded platter, not even a silver platter, a golden platter, and said, "Here you go, AMD. Beat us, beat the snot out of us, please."
You know,
And, it's
I
it's
sort of
got to be a
think
good launch.
I sort of think that, in a long term, and I know gamers are going to say, "Oh, it sucked. It was a bad." Look, it doesn't suck. Was it released too early? Yes.
Yeah.
Does it need refinements? Yes. Does it need better software support? Yes. Do you need to fire your marketing people? Some of them. I wouldn't say all of them, but maybe a stern talking to with some of them, and maybe you know
Or get somebody in the
relook at the
review community.
organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, do
Somebody from the
something
review
different so
community
you
to
don't
test.
repeat this.
Yeah.
But I really think that, and I think it should have been from the get go. 9800X 3D is coming. Expect a 10 to 15% gaming performance boost over these figures,
Yeah.
plus or minus 10%. And they should have just been upfront and said it's coming in first quarter, January, February of 25. Now, with that being said, because the launch was that bad and they're not selling these parts, we're seeing X3D early because of it. So, I mean, for Christmas gamers, luckily we don't have to wait until after Christmas to give our money. But I really think that when we kind of run through the full circle, um, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be a good thing if AMD can do a successful launch.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of gamers are sitting back and saying, I really think that very first release needs to be solid. Like, it has to be positive. It has, to be
And
honest, it seems like everybody needs to have a really good, positive release in the tech industry. Like, everybody sort of sucks.
yeah.
Like, Radeon's not going for the high end stuff. So you've got to have a really good, compelling piece on Radeon. Intel,
I think they've got a good
we
reason
have
for
plenty
that.
of issues. AMD, the 9000 series has sucked. And it's interesting how everyone sends to be in this little hole of crappiness. And some people, I think, can dig their way out. I think AMD with a good 9800X 3D launch, can dig themselves and get themselves out of this fairly quickly.
Yep.
Um,
The marketing
I
team's just
don't.
got to pull their head out of their butt.
Yeah,
That's really what it is.
on the Radeon side, I think you've really got to have a really positive value segment. I really think that the value piece here is going to be, 4800, RTX 4080 performance at 499.
Yeah. Even if it was
549.
even if it was 599, I mean, I think that would be very reasonable. But, at the same time too, the play on the 8800 XT makes a lot of sense considering the UDNA rumor we heard recently, or actually AMD announced recently. And one of the reasons I think it makes sense is because that frees up not only budget, but fab time in not having to necessarily push for the higher end parts, so that they can get the 8000 series out of the manufacturing stream and they can start pushing the next series with UDNA, which brings you massively improved AI performance from the commercial side, massively improved ray tracing from the commercial side, and brings it all into a package that the home gamer can play with, which directly competes with AMD's line, or with NVIDIA's line, rather than being like, well, we're competing on raster, but our AI and other stuff kind of sucks. So Sorry.
Originally I thought that raster was going to be king, and I've kind of come to the full circle that I think just in general gamers want more than just rasterization, and I think AMD kind of realized that that's where they were really missing, and so I think the UDNA and the RTX, the ray tracing performance, is kind of where they're saying, okay, we're going to solve that with 8000. We're going to give a really good value. If they can deliver on that and get a bunch of these units out in gamers' hands, that's
Yeah.
also going to translate to more AI people saying, let's give it a try and see how it goes.
Yep.
And if it's a positive experience across the board. But I really, when you come back to it, I really think it has to be software. I think you have to have the software ready to go on day one. Has to be good.
Yeah.
If it's not ready, push the stupid thing back. You've got to feel comfortable with somebody on your team saying, where are we at? When can I actually release this stuff? When will this, I can sell these things. I can put, pretty little silvery things in boxes all day long. When can people actually use it where it will be good? And I think that's the piece that AMD has to hit a home run on. And I think it's more so on the Ryzen side right now than the Radeon side, but I really think it has to be both. And if you feel stupidly confident that you can do both, you release them at the same time.
Yep.
Otherwise, you stagger and say, you know what? Radeon's ready. It's been ready. Drivers are ready. That's coming out 1021. Ryzen, it just say, you know what? It'll be here before Christmas. And it's going to be here before Christmas in volumes. We're ironing out the last little software pieces right now.
Yeah.
That's what they need to say. They need to be stupidly transparent. And I think that, to be honest, at least on the Radeon side, I think you've got to be price competitive from a value perspective. And I think to some extent, Ryzen, you need to be priced value competitive there. I don't think you need to be stupid cheap on 9800X3D because I think gamers are expecting to pay for it.
Yeah, I don't think they're expecting to pay maybe $1,000 for a 9950. But
how much would you pay for a 98X3D? I mean,
I'd probably do about 500 for a 98, maybe 6. But
I think maybe the 499 to 549. I mean, if you could do that and then the same price range for the 8800 XT, that's a really attractive bundle right there.
Right.
And then if you could get that, again, if you can get those two pieces and a motherboard and a RAM and being at like $1,000 to $1,100, that would be so good. And the beauty about X3D is that you could be fine with these Micro Center bundles because X3D doesn't really, RAM doesn't really make a huge difference. So you could have, not the world's best RAM from a speed or a stepping piece, but you could still, with the X3D, you just kind of, you don't care. You just give me a lot of it. So
exactly. Well, on that note,
bombshell.
Yeah, on that bombshell, I don't want to gimmick and fringe. I mean, come on.
But it's on the bombshell.
Yeah, on that bombshell, I think it's time we call it an evening. And thank you all for watching. Remember to like and comment and subscribe and do all the stuff down there in the doobly-doo that appeases the algorithm. We really appreciate it. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys.
Good night, everybody.